11Tenths Racecraft.
Welcome to the 11Tenths podcast. It's a few episodes deep now. Thank you for joining in. Today we're talking about something a little bit more debatable, the idea of checking out a lesser car to a greater car and if it's worth tuning or your baseline for tuning. Before we dive into that, I introduce my good friend Randy Spar, owner of 11Tenths. Myself, Milk for Coffee. David, welcome.
Welcome.
So the whole reason we want to start off on this was a lot of people like to modify the BMW 335i against the V8 BMW M3. That's what generation, the
E92.
Yeah. So it's a very popular thing we see. It's a big scene car still.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, from my opinion, outside in, it looks as though it's all power and money.
Yeah, I think the 335 and 54 and 55 turbo platforms, so the BMW, they can be had at a relatively, modest price now. You can pick them up 7,000 or 8,000 used.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the younger generation that are getting into cars, they might have $10,000 a budget, and with that, you can have potentially a 400 horsepower car for your first car. So
right.
Everyone's just like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer. Let's just dive right into that. And, with all the drifting happening, it's a platform with a rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a recipe for a newfound enthusiast to just get in there and have the most bang for the buck, so to speak.
And it's a lower entry level as well, because it doesn't take much to slap on just an engine tune and technically no other parts.
Yeah, like
a tune
and downpipe is about 150 horsepower gain. So you're looking at about 440, 450 crank horsepower just with those two things. And, that's like $1,500, all in.
Right.
And, on top of the price of the car, of course. Mm-hmm. Now, the reliability is a big question mark. Everyone knows the 54s are not the most reliable platform out there. Mm-hmm. So if you go into it, you're going to want to budget a couple grand a year just on maintenance items, because there's quite a few things that go wrong with those cars. But it's all been researched to death.
Yeah.
If you have an issue, you can probably, on the side of the road with a four-ways on, look at,
on your phone,
look on a phone and say, hey, I know exactly what's wrong, and you can order the part and have it go to your house, or call up 11Tenths and we'll take care of you. So we've got a lot of experience with those cars.
So, and that's why we draw on this. So let's talk about why people do this. So the BMW M3 V8.
Right.
S65.
Yeah.
S65.
Right.
So again, you guys have lots of experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
You guys did a great sale around the holidays with regards to rod bearings.
Yeah.
So let's put it this way, actually, just thinking off the top of my head here,
mm-hmm.
the cost of a rod bearing service is still technically slightly more than a downpipe and tune.
It is, but so that is one of the shortfalls of that motor, mm-hmm. along with a couple other motors that are share the same architecture. Mm-hmm. Other than throttle actuators and the rod bearings, the motor is really quite reliable. There are certain things that you'd have to maintain on those motors. You want to make sure that your spark plugs are changed a little bit more often than not on a normal motor.
Yeah.
There are no knock sensors on the S65, and they actually use, the computer uses the actual spark plugs, to get information on how the car is performing with regards to detonation. So that's why spark plugs are really important on those motors.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah. So,
you kind of learn. A lot of people don't realize there's a couple things. I'm sorry if some of you this may be redundant, but spark plugs are a maintenance item that you really should get on a schedule, just like your oil. Okay.
Yeah, with the ultra high performance applications.
Right. And I'd like to say anyone who's starting to tune a turbo.
Yeah.
Or forced induction of any car, spark plugs, period, is keep an eye out for them. Yeah,
the more high-strung that motor is, you're going to want to do plugs every couple of months. You know what I mean? They're relatively inexpensive. You're looking at under $20 each. There's only 6 6 of them. You know what I mean? It's not that hard to do. You can figure it out and watch a YouTube video and do it yourself in your garage.
It helps you narrow down a problem too, like the amount of times where it could just be a spark plug because you didn't maintain it versus your ignition coil.
Yeah.
You'd rather rule that out and say, oh no, I do my spark plugs every so often, and then maybe it is an ignition coil this time. And oil, right? That's the same thing. When you're talking about the rod bearing service, that dials back through a lot of BMW motors down through to the S54, but you could do it with any motor. A lot of people do an oil test. I actually had a unique situation with a gentleman who I race online with during the winter, and he kept on going back to the BMW dealer and saying, hey, listen, I'd really like to test my oil, save some. And because of the dealer, it was such a routine service, they never ended up saving any of the old oil. So I know we actually steered him back to 1110, so hopefully you get a phone call soon. But that's the kind of service that if you're going to tune and keep an eye on your motor, that's the little details that you might want to keep an eye on. It's basically a chemical test. It gets the breakdown of the motor.
It's kind of like going to the doctor and, giving him a little urine sample. So you basically, when you're pouring your old oil out, you capture a little bit. There's a company that we're talking about called Blackstone. They're out of the US. If you contact them ahead of time, they'll send you up a free kit, which is really just a bottle and instructions. And
just like a urine sample.
Yeah, and then you send it back down to them, and you have 2 choices. You can get results back quickly, or I think for a lesser charge, they'll take their time. But that doesn't necessarily tell you everything. I think that test is great if you're a regular with them. So I would recommend starting to do that kind of test, so that down the road they'll be able to tell you if certain things are starting to wear versus others. Because just to gather some oil and send it down there and say, hey, how's my oil? They're going to be like, well, it
was dirty.
It has all these things, but really we need to know if your engine is in the process of failing, or you've got some remnants of an additive that was put in there, several changes ago or whatever, right? So consistent information, right? So that's what it is for those.
So it all comes back to maintenance. Doesn't matter what motor, period. And I think a lot of people think that the entry cost of owning a higher end car like the M3 versus a regular 3 Series is, oh my, there's that one service. It's still every so often. You're going to be servicing your lesser car more because you're asking more of a lesser prepared motor for the situation, right?
Right. I mean, the M cars, parts generally cost more. If you compare, the same part on both cars, it'll cost more on the M. Now, I don't know if it's an M tax. My wife, she says M stands for much more money, because she drives a non-M. I've got a couple of M's, and she sees, the brake job on hers is like, a fraction of the M.
True.
So everything costs a bit more. I'm sure M, the marketing wants to take a little bit of money. There is also, they have to retool, and there's less M cars sold. So I'm sure there's probably some sort of a formula where they have to figure out to get their money out of the said parts, right? But
now there was one key thing when we're talking about, because I don't want to dwell, we want to actually touch on some other cars as well, but BMW is a great place to start because it's a big debate.
Right.
The 3 Series dialing up the turbos, because of course you can change suspension, you can, money's the limit there. If you're going to swap everything out, you could kind of get the same type of platform parts, but key thing, a V8 that's been built to go to the track, right, versus a daily driver turboed car that's had the wick turned up, the pressure's been forced in. Right. On the track,
if we're talking, there's 2 different worlds here. So if we're talking track, you don't want to tune on that turbo car. You can throw all the hardware upgrades to it. You can do the exhaust and your intake and your charge pipe and yada yada yada, but keep that tune stock. If you're going to go to the track, heat is the largest result of a tune, and that's also the largest enemy to constant lapping. So you're out there on the track, and I don't think you'll get more than maybe 7 laps before you go into a limp mode if you're running a tune on any sort of car. You can combat that by throwing tens of thousands of dollars worth of parts, like upgraded coolers and different, different spark plugs and different injectors and different plastic coils and meth. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but you're also, how do you just have a stress-free track day? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, and a lot of times, a lot of times, all that power is not going to help you in the corners anyways. All it's going to do is get you to the next corner quicker.
Where your brakes are technically
Your brakes
smaller.
are going to be, so you have to upgrade your brakes because now you're carrying way more speed going to that same corner, and you're still running a 255 tire.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. So with that said, the other part is when you're going to tune these cars, what is the base car that maybe was a little cheaper to get, entry level, buy your car, get into it, versus buying the higher end option car. So I'm going to dial over to the Volkswagen side of things. When you're buying a GTI or GLI, and I'm going to use the Mark V generation from the late 2005 to 2010 era as an example, because Mark IV kids need to transition to something. So Mark Vs are now, I think, going to be the next thing. I didn't buy a GLI at the time that I owned one because I knew I was going to change out the suspension. I knew I was going to change out maybe the seats at some point. There was nothing different between a GLI and a Jetta or a GTI and a Golf other than wheels, some cosmetic stuff, and the seats. The seats. The things are, the springs are different. Maybe the dampers are different too. But 9 out of 10 times, anyone who's going to tune, you're going to swap those out anyway. It's not enough to stay stock. But the A-arms were the same. The brakes were pretty much the same depending on which model. And the engines were dead on the same, maybe a slight tune, but the same there. So the argument can be made, depending on what you're going to swap out. Maybe it's okay to buy the lesser model, or maybe it has other options. But it's not the same with the BMW. You've got different control arms,
you're right. I mean, I guess you could say that. Because, I mean, within the model range itself, so you'd have a 335, and then they have the 335 IS. So that's like an updated version of the same car. Right? And then, but you're not comparing it to the M3, and the M3 is, substantially different. The brakes, all the suspension components, the interior, everything's different. Really.
There gets to be a point with certain cars where they are significantly different. You can buy a Nissan Sentra Nismo that is literally just some red striping and a different bumper. There's not even a power bump.
It's an appearance package.
It's an appearance package.
Right. It's like the S-Line for Audi, right?
The S-Line, same thing. And even be careful now, you're getting even that with the M options on the newer Beamers. It's a
M
sale.
Sport or M Sport, I think they call it, or something. The new one.
Now on the other side of things, and we're the Americans are a great example of this. Is the race package or track packs.
Track pack.
You've got Mustang. You can get a GT, or you can get the 350 and 350R.
Right.
So
or you get the track pack with the GT.
Right.
There's a difference. And I've seen it now. I'll just give you a short little story here. So one of our students at one of the schools that I frequent, he's got a Mustang GT with a track pack. And he's admittedly dropped about $20,000 in mods into the track pack. And I asked him, I go, so he would come in, he's got the loudest car at the school by far. The thing is just blows my eardrums. He's got the full exhaust with the long tube headers, and he's got the different wheels, and he upgraded the brakes, and he upgraded the suspension. And I was asking him, I go, why'd you upgrade everything? You got the track pack. He says, honestly, it was all not very good quality stuff, the track pack stuff.
Really?
That's what he claims. He says it just wasn't good. It wasn't up to snuff. So he'd swap out the shocks and he'd put in some, I can't remember. But I was surprised that he went, not only he got the track pack, but he had to change everything after the fact. And he said if he could, turn back time and do it all over again, he would have just got the Shelby. Now, the Shelby is a large step difference, but you're also getting I've driven both.
Cooler.
I've driven both. Yeah, the car, even the transmission, which is arguably really terrible on the GTs. It's a Tremec on the Shelby version, right? It's a totally different, much better transmission. The braking again is if the track pack brakes were so good, why didn't they just use those in a Shelby? Makes you wonder.
Well, that's the thing, right? In some cases, you'll see a track pack, like when we're talking GM side of things, a track pack is literally take the upper model stuff and throw it down on the lower model.
They did it a little different. You're right. Like on the Camaro SS, you get the ZL1 pack. Or was that, sorry, Z?
Well, there's all sorts. I tried to research this. I've forgotten already, but the Corvette and the Camaro and the Cadillac, they all have different package codes. But it means the same thing. It's essentially a track pack.
Right.
But a lot of that there is kind of adding the stuff that an M car on BMW or in some cases an AMG car to Benz adds that track type stuff. So usually that means more cooling. This is going to become a thing about heat with us.
Yeah.
But heat at the track is your main concern. So more coolers, cooling for your diff, cooling for your tranny, cooling for your motor, obviously.
Yeah,
but like more of it.
Also,
right?
brakes, brake cooling, the tire compound, like right from the dealership, you know, they're sticking you on Cup and Trofeo tires. And the other large thing is limited slip diff.
Right.
So a lot of that's a big ticket item. That's a $4,000 or $5,000 purchase to get your car to that stage. And you know, sometimes if the track pack is only $8,000 more than the standard one, that's half the price of the diff installed right there. Sometimes it is better to get the track pack version from the manufacturer.
If I could pick one modification right now for my Z, it would literally be a limited slip. And I'm looking into the prices of these things, and I'm like, that's a big, you don't realize, but it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. Like, it's something you can really actually feel on the track. You put the power down a lot sooner coming out of the corner.
What about the you've driven them, the newer Beamers and their e-diffs? What are your thoughts versus like an old school limited slip? Any difference to you? Or?
I haven't driven enough of the new ones at like on its course slow enough where the diff will make a difference. Okay. Right. I go a lot of times on the Most Sport large track. Yeah. You know, the only time you're really going to feel something out of maybe corner 5 and corner 10. You know, generally, but you know, then you're contending with, I mean, you're still exiting these corners at 80, 100 kilometers an hour. So, you know, for the diff for you to notice a diff, you need 600 horsepower.
Well, I was going to say, like,
on that track, right? On a slower track, you'll probably notice it more.
Well, and the thing is what you're looking out for. If you've got a good set of tires, you've got to have the power to overcome.
Right.
So, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. So as always, there's a lot of cool projects and parts and stuff going on at 11Tenths. So the holidays, you told me something a little closer to home in shop is going on. Yeah, we had we have a couple of our techs that work with us. They have their own personal projects that they work on their own time. Ted actually he loves his Nissan Silvias, his old school Silvias and Skylines. Hence the following that has followed him around and that we have. And so he has an S14 Silvia, a 240 SX, and we had essentially a blown M60 4.4 liter V8 out of a 7 Series. Okay. And so he took that and he fixed it up and, you know, refreshed the whole motor and then threw it in the car, custom mounts. It took a couple of transmission tries to figure out which tranny and, more importantly, which flywheel and clutch fit that whole mishmash and you know, all the custom hoses for the cooling. And anyways, he just fired it up. All right. So hopefully this is the first start of the M60 swapped Silvia. Ted, let's see if it starts up. Cross our fingers. Whoa! Okay. Yeah, my ears are ringing. Driving it around the block. That's pretty wild.
And so it is pretty wild. It sounds amazing, and you know, just to pop that hood open and look at the M60.
BMW meets now, right? Like, that's going to be the thing.
Yeah,
what's this Nissan doing here?
You know, so that's pretty awesome. And now our other tech, Ali, he has an E36 Sedan M3. Yep. Also, he had the thing painted like House of Color candy apple red. It looks beautiful. Yep. And he's going pretty crazy with the motor.
Swap as well, right?
Yeah, we're doing a 2JZ swap on that with internals, so pistons, rods, cams, and running a precision turbo. Link ECU, so we're a dealer for Link. And we partnered up with Boost Logic out of the US to do some tuning on those platforms. Okay. So we'll be doing some custom tuning once that project's underway. So actually it's already underway. So we're hoping that, you know, within the next few weeks we'll be able to start tuning it. And Yeah. So some pretty cool things happening there at
Point
the
proven
shop.
that it's not just enthusiasts that come in the door, it's enthusiasts working at the counter and at the lifts. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's key. That's some awesome stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. But anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So other things, other cars, let's talk Japanese. Same idea. You know, this is kind of dialing back, but a Civic.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a regular Civic. Well, actually, we'll go with the new one. You can get a Type-R right now. I don't think anyone will say that you could get a standard Civic, whatever the touring or top model is, to the Type-R level. Like the suspension is literally completely different in the front.
Yeah, there are some limitations. I agree. I mean, the Type-R is what an M3 would be to, you know, it's hard to get to M3 track levels with a 335.
Right.
In my opinion, like, you know, you can change out the suspension and the brakes, and you put a bunch of aero. I mean, it is possible, but then you've got this, you know, turbo heat pump that's essentially looming in the background, and you're wondering, you know, am I going to spend the entire day on the track, or am I going to just, like, you know, my $500 track day, is it going to be half a day because, you know, I'm going to be dealing with heat issues? I see it time and time again. And the guy out there with the stock M3 is just
turning laps.
That's it.
Even if it's slightly slower per se at one moment, you're turning laps. Like
he's not worried about the car. He's focusing on the driving, right? Yeah.
So now there's a whole other type of comparison where there's lesser cars in the same model range that turn out to be better, maybe due to the weight and price. So I'm going to bring up one as a left fielder here.
Sure.
I know you guys don't work on this much, but we've seen it a lot in the scene. The Genesis coupe.
Okay. Yeah.
2-liter turbo versus a V6.
Yeah.
Have you driven both? I have not.
I haven't driven either.
I've driven the turbo.
Yeah, but I have heard that, you know, the turbo one is the one to get.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, it's lighter. It's you know,
it's lighter, easily tunable again.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a massive difference between the V6 model. I know both come with Brembo brake stock. Every car has Brembo if you actually look under it. But anyway, right? Yeah. But there's other cars like that too. So let's talk on the collector realm. E39 5 Series, the manual 6-cylinder, nearly as popular and as rare as hound's teeth as the V8 M5. I'm not a magazine reviewer. I have driven both cars. Actually, sorry, no, I've never driven the V8 model, but I've driven 540s, 530s, 528s. A lot of people like the idea of the 6-cylinder weighing less over the front end in that car and saying it's a better balanced E39.
I don't know if it's the weight as opposed to the type of steering.
Okay.
Because the V8s have a reciprocating ball. It just gives you a little bit less feedback in the steering. And the 6-cylinders have a traditional rack and pinion. Okay. Right? So that's, I think a lot of people are overlooking that part of the steering. Yeah. And, you know, the motor, the V8, it is all aluminum. You know, it might weigh, and I believe the actual 6-cylinder is a cast iron, so I don't think the weight of the engine. The weight,
but it is maybe the feel then.
Yeah, I think it's more the feel. And I have driven all of them, and like the little a 530 Sport with the 6-cylinder and the manual is an amazing little car. It's a mid-sized car. It's an amazing car.
Yeah, it's funny. That car used to be big. Now it's kind of small. It's like what, the size of the regular 3 Series now.
Yeah. And then on the other side, the M5 is also an amazing car as well. I think the throws are a little bit long. I mean, that could be easily changed out. And the clutch pedal's a little bit light, but tremendous amount of torque.
So switching, there's a good example of again buying one versus the other. If you're able to get into, because they're not that far off in price depending on mileage. Yeah. And all you got to do is maybe that's the one weak point. You're like, okay, well, you can change it for what? Fraction of $1,000 or less. You can change the shifter depending on how in depth you want to go.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that big of a difference for modification.
Yeah. It is one of the last hand-built M cars, right? The motor and the E39 there. So
now something I've got less experience with. What about on the higher end? What about your more exotic cars, your 911s, your Lamborghinis? I don't really dive into Ferrari. Ferrari's a Ferrari. But,
the way I like Porsche is these guys are geniuses at Porsche. They literally, I think even Jeremy Clarkson referenced this once. If you look at the entire model line, you look at the size of the motor, you look at the output, and you look at everything, everything is just perfectly gapped each time, right?
Yeah.
So you really just kind of look at how much money you have, and that's the car you're going to get.
Okay. So that's okay. So here's the thing. Now, on the spot question then, and you being a Porsche guy, if you could pick between, let's say let's take one of the generations where you could pick the last year GT2 or the last model year GT2, or knowing that the newer Turbo S is not a GT2, but technically it's faster. Yeah. What would you go with?
They're always doing that.
Right.
So they'll come out with a 997, 4.0, and then they'll throw that motor into the next
one. Yeah, in the regular one.
Yeah, in the regular version.
So what do? Do you go?
So the 991 GT3 Touring was essentially like when they had that special R, that was a manual 4-liter.
GT3 without
and then they just came out with a Touring right afterwards in the next life cycle.
Let's break it down for a couple of different angles there. You're going to the track. Do you buy the newer car or the older car?
Well, I would recommend renting each of them through a Turo, spending or something, and spending some time, because the new one, a manufacturer is going to put R&D into the product. The newer car will turn a faster lap time. It's going to have more gizmos and more gadgets. It's going to be, arguably better, right? Now, but is the driving experience better? I don't know about that. A lot of the purists are saying, the 997 the Metzger was the last of where you can really, get all the feedback. You still have the hydraulic steering before they changed it, and then the 991s are fantastic. They're fast cars, but do they have the same driving, satisfaction? And it's a subjective argument. You'd have to really drive each one, because there's a lot of drivers out there that may not even notice the difference, right?
Yeah, true.
They'll get in the 991 and they'll prefer the Android Auto or the Apple CarPlay and the amenities of it, and they'll go around at 4/10ths all the time, and that one time they go up to 8/10ths on ramp. How are they going to know the difference between a 997 and the current one that they have going around an on ramp? They don't know, right? Or they can do a whole bunch of track days, and not really feel that or notice that.
So from a different perspective, again, you've got the same amount of money, and they're roughly the same price. Do you buy the newer one, less miles, or do you get the older one that has the more prestigious acronym? As a collector, let's say.
Oh, as a collector? Oh, that's a tough one. As a collector, you can never predict the future, so you don't know what's going to be worth more. Personally,
the acronyms for Porsche are generally the more letters and numbers on the end of a car. Generally means it's more collector, like in their down the road.
Personally, I would love a 997 GT3 RS. That I think is like the pinnacle of a modern car, but also still has a lot of feeling. And manual gearbox, got the Metzger motor, hydraulic steering, yada yada. It's got everything. It's a great car.
So
I just don't like the lipstick, theme that they have going with the different colored, literally like it looks like lipstick around the front nose. We're talking about the RS, right?
The
different
lines and
the different colored mirrors. I think
it's like the Nismo pack for the Sentra, but applied to a 911.
I don't like the look of them, but I think they're fantastic cars.
You can always change. I think that's one thing that people forget. You can change the look of any car, period, at any point. Paint, vinyl, wheels. That, it doesn't matter what car you get, appearance.
That's true. Yeah, you can always change the look of it.
But please don't add badges to cars that don't deserve the badges. That's just take, the best thing to do is take badges away.
Yeah.
Just take off all the badging.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we've learned here is the market is endless. We know that. That's what you guys do. It's what we enjoy to do personally is continually tune cars, even if they are the better model or the lesser model. Just make it your own, and we can't say not to do that. Do what makes the best decision for you and your finances and what you enjoy. I've started to meet guys, in our industry that are even at the track. They would rather fiddle with cars.
Yeah.
You know, like I know a guy that I've seen at the track a bunch of times. He's got this insane S2000, and it's gone through more evolutions of just building it than I've seen him turn a lap. And he enjoys it. He loves it. I don't know him that well. I can just see that from the outside in, and that's for some people, right?
Yeah, I mean, every instance is a case-by-case basis, right? It depends ultimately what you want to do. You know, if you want to tinker with a car, then buy yourself a trailer and a tow vehicle, and then tow your project to the track.
Yeah.
Obviously, make sure it's safe. You don't want to, you don't want to cut corners with safety at all. But if that's the case, and you have a failure, it's a learning experience for you. You know, tow it back to the pits, load it on the trailer, and maybe next time it'll be a more reliable experience. But if you plan on having one car and it's a do-it-all car, I would try and get the best car engineered by the manufacturer right off the bat. So, I would get the M, get the RS for the Audi version or whatever, because these guys,
it's built that way.
Yeah, years and years of engineering, and they've overlooked, they haven't overlooked anything. They've actually engineered everything to work functionally and to last a while. So, that's what I would do. And then, you could take it to 11/10ths. There's always room for improvement. You want better brakes, better, feeling brake pedal, little things like that.
You know what's funny? How much people don't realize this. I've really enjoyed this difference is set of pads can make the noise and dust difference, but also an amazing difference, even with a stock disc. I really wish I would have tried some more aggressive, biting pads with the stock disc.
Ultimately, if you are going to track your car quite a bit, not necessarily. I would say change the fluid. If it's a newer car, like anything, within the last 10 years, you don't really have to do the stainless lines. But the brake pads are a huge improvement. And I would even go as far as saying get a more aggressive pad and just run 2 pads. So, spend some time the day before the track event, in your driveway, slap them out or come to our shop and we'll put the track pads on for that track event. And then you don't have to worry about the pads. It's like track wheels. Just do the pads and then your track wheels together. And then, swap them back out so you're not dealing with the squealing and all the noise.
It's the same thing as here in Canada, you have, it should be that you have a set of winter tires and summer tires.
Exactly.
You technically, both sets of tires last longer. So the same goes for pads. Right? The same goes for track tires versus running a street tire. Maybe it's a space thing or funds thing, but that really should be where you're. If you're starting out at the track, start budgeting for that first. That's my tip. Right?
For sure. I mean, pads don't necessarily cost that much either. You can get a set of Hawk DTCs or something. I think they're maybe $400 for the set all the way around. And you can, speaking of DTCs, you can get a more aggressive pad front to rear.
Like you can very easily go with a 70 front or 60 rear and there's all sorts. We're not going to dive into that. Literally, talk to Randy if that's something you want to get into because that's a little bit deeper in the level. But so I think we've covered it off again. A lot for you guys to take away. So again, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, comment. We love your feedback. And we'll see you again on the 11th.
Awesome. Next month.
Bye, guys.
Bye.